Jay Harwood for the special. This is an amazing conversation with Ron Shelton, uh, producer director of Bull Durham, and the paperback edition of the Church of Baseball, The Making of Bull Durham. Durham had just come out, so it's been a great run. The film was introduced in '88. Did you think it would turn out like this? And I understand that you had a hard time selling the rights to different companies, and only one company bid on it for not meager amount.
No, I was just trying to stay on schedule and not get fired. I had no idea that all these years later would be this classic movie, and I'd be asked to write a book about it, and I'd be talking to you.
The whole premise, and when Bull Durham came out, there really weren't a lot of baseball movies, right? There's no Field of Dreams yet, no For the Love of the Game, no League of Their Own. I mean, you were really the first one, right, to come out with a baseball movie.
Yeah, Hollywood is still afraid of baseball movies for a number of reasons. One is, even though there's been some huge hits, the foreign there's no foreign audience for baseball movies, except
Right.
people say Latin America. That's not true. Latin America baseball is Mexico and the Caribbean, and that's a tiny market. The rest of it is all soccer. Japan doesn't bid on a movie until they see if it's a hit or not. And South Korea, that's basically it. So there's no foreign sales. It's got to be a big hit in America.
I think the thing that made this movie different, right? It really told the story through the eyes of Susan Sarandon. Really, the first time a woman had gotten involved with a baseball movie like this.
Well, yeah, that was, my idea was to make a movie that appealed to people beyond baseball fans, but also was a baseball movie like it had never been made before. It wasn't about hitting a home run in the bottom of the ninth. It was about the daily struggles and how difficult it is to get out of the minor leagues and to move up. And what most of professional sports is not in the spotlight, as you know. And so I wanted to tell that also from the woman's point of view. So I think that's where I started. I started with the idea of a woman talking, and it just sort of went from there.
The studio didn't really want Susan Sarandon because they thought she was too old, right? And then there was it was between Kevin Costner and Kurt Russell and Tim Robbins and Charlie Sheen, right? They were, and how did you finally settle on Kevin Costner?
Well, Kurt was not available. I mean, originally he was the idea, but he was not available. So then I found Kevin because some friends, I'd liked him in a couple of movies, but he wasn't a star yet. He was in Silverado, which he was quite good, and couple other little movies. And they said, "Hey, he's a good high school baseball player." So I took him out to the batting cage here in L.A., where you put quarters in. We played catch on the parking lot, and then I put quarters in, and he started hitting line drives, right-handed and left-handed, and I knew I had my guy. So he was easy in that regard. And then and he turns out to be a wonderful athlete and terrific, now a big star. I mean, Charlie Sheen's a very good baseball player, as we later found out from Major League. But he was already doing a baseball movie called 8 Men Out about the 1919 Black Sox. So he was unavailable, and then it was a long search to find Tim.
Kurt Russell had the Mets connection. I don't know if you're aware. Matt Franco is his uncle, one of our former players.
Right.
And when we used to go to Houston, Kurt used to come and work out with us to the Astrodome. He used to hit bullets to the outfield, and so he was a pretty good athlete of his own.
He played Double-A baseball. I'm a good friend of Kurt's, actually, and we've made a movie together, and we want to make another one.
When I get back to movie, I'm an old PR guy, right? And I had a lot of Craft Davises to work with in my career. Not probably as extreme as letting a pitch go or telling the pitcher what the ball's going to be and hitting a home run. But I had guys like, Keith Hernandez and Gary Carter, David Wright, and John Franco, who would tutor guys like Crash was trying to tutor Nuke LaRouche about what to do. I mean, was there any model, the student protege who you picked up on that from, or because it's a great PR lesson, what to do and how to get ready for the major leagues.
Well, the whole idea came from, oddly enough, when I played in the Orioles organization. and I talk about this in the book, a few years ahead of me, there was a guy named Steve Dalkowski who had played, who
Former number one pick threw hard, right? A hard
everybody
throwing
said the
pitcher.
hardest thrower ever. It was before Radar Gun,
Yeah,
Ted Williams, everybody. And his catcher in the minors was Cal Ripken Sr. And he has statistics that are just mind-boggling. You know, he averaged 13 strikeouts and 13 walks a game his career. In one game, he walked 22 and struck out 21 and pitched the whole. You know, they'd throw 300 innings. You know, in those days, and but he was wild and he was an alcoholic. It was quite a sad story. And he finally, after like 10 years, got to AAA because he learned to, because a minor league manager named Earl Weaver told him to not throw so hard. That's a true story.
right.
In Elmira, New York. And so he started throwing about 80%, which was still God knows how. And he got to AAA, where a veteran AAA first baseman who was 35 and a mature guy named Joe Altobelli,
Former manager.
who later was my manager and then later with the Orioles and the Giants. And Joe was the mature guy, and so and Steve was the insane guy with the gift. And so they said, Joe, we're gonna room you with Dalkowski, Dalco he was called, so that you can mature him, you know, and teach him the ways, mentor him. And I asked Joe, what was that like? And he used the classic line. He says, I roomed with his suitcase because Steve was in the bars drunk all the time and just would show up at the bar. And he said Steve was a lovable guy. Guys liked him, but he just, you know, we didn't know then what we know now, that alcoholism is a disease. But he, and sadly just burned out. He just died last year in a home in Connecticut, where he's from. But the idea of the veteran teaching the wild young pitcher, even though that gave me the idea.
Gary Cohn would have announced his work at Durham for a while. How did you settle on Durham? I know you played in the Orioles system, 5 years or so, but how did you settle on Durham to be the focal point for the movie?
The producer was from Durham and knew about the team. He actually owned a little percentage of it, a guy named Tom Mount. But I didn't have to shoot there. I drove all over the Sally League and the Carolina League before I wrote the script. And there was something about Durham, because that old ballpark of theirs was in neighborhoods. People would walk to the games, and it was surrounded by tobacco warehouses that were now empty because, you know, tobacco was on the decline, and the whole town was boarded up. It was in a huge depression, which it's not now. And I thought this was a perfect visual symbol of the minor leagues, out of the way, run down, and kind of neighborhood-like. And so I fell in love with the area, actually, and I should have invested because the place has gone through the roof now. But yeah, that's how I liked Annie walking to the games from her home.
I honestly, before the movie, now it's a boom town, and your movie made it stay alive, right? The town in Durham.
The locals give me more credit than I deserve, because after the movie came out, the movie did help the minor leagues, I will say that, and they started taking off. And the town started taking off because of what they call the Research Triangle, which is like a Silicon Valley between the three university towns. And but my movie was in the perfect spot. So when I go down there and they, in the new ballpark, they always say, "Well, I built it." Not true, but I think our movie was at the right place at the right time, and I don't have to buy a drink in Durham ever again, Jay.
Yeah. But how did you work Max Patkin into the movie? I love the in the bar when they start dancing with Annie and the whole bit. How did you work him into the movie?
Well, when I was in the minors, Max Patkin would perform throughout the year, usually at a home game of ours, and somewhere on the road you'd run into him. And I loved him. And a lot of the players thought he was kind of corny and old fashioned, but I loved his physical humor and just the fact that he was still doing this. He didn't miss a show for 41 years. So I got to know him a little bit, in the minors. And we weren't really friends or anything. I was just a minor leaguer who actually laughed at him and I had a couple of beers with him. But so when I wrote him into the script, and then I called him out of the blue, and I said, "You don't know me, Max, but I played with you in Amarillo. I mean, you were at Amarillo, you were in Dallas, you were in Stockton, you were in Bakersfield, Rochester, and I flew him out, and we became good friends then. And I was delighted to kind of give him this moment that he deserved.
When you were in college, second baseman, right? And you played. Did you think? When did you think you could turn into this, which would be your career? One moment, one film, or I mean, did you have? When would you see this would go for you?
Well, I was the classic 10-year overnight success. You know what I mean? I mean, nobody sees all the dues paying you do with the writing the scripts and getting this made and that and hustling and then all of a sudden Bull Durham, which was my first movie as a director, exploded, which I didn't expect, and people said, "Where'd this guy come from?" Well, I came from 10 years of grinding work after 5 years of baseball, and it's a day-to-day thing. It's still a day-to-day thing. I still write, and I've still got projects, and I still hustle them. And so I think after Bull Durham came out, I thought, I can make my living doing this.
It just reminds me. I'm a big George M. Cohan fan, Yankee Doodle Dandy, and the first part of the movie, they're trying to sell their scripts for Yankee Doodle Dandy, and like every company turns it down. Decent Golf. Have you seen the movie at all? Yankee Doodle Dandy.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, Decent Golf turned it down, and then Yankee Doodle Dandy, it became a classic. It just reminds me of your movie that everybody turned it down, and now it costs over $50 million, and how do you think the other companies feel? Any second guesses from people who you dealt with before?
Yeah, they second guess, and then you make a movie that doesn't do business, and they abandon you. So it's you can't take that very seriously. I mean, everybody turned. I have nothing to do with this show, but Yellowstone was turned down by every network in town.
Really?
And now it's basically printing money. It's the Franklin Mint, and there's derivative shows off of it and all of that. A lot of movies are like that. When Star Wars was shot for Fox way back in the day, the first one, Fox didn't want to distribute it. They thought it was a disaster. So there's a lot of guesswork in this town. Bill Goldman once said famously, "In Hollywood, nobody knows anything." And I mean, look at drafting players in sports. The hardest sport to predict a player that you draft or sign out of high school or college is baseball. You pretty much have a good clue in basketball and football. Baseball, nobody has a clue. There's number one drafts that can't hit an A ball, and there's guys that are free agents that become in the Hall of Fame. So it's a tough sport, and movies are kind of tough to figure out what's going to work and what isn't.
Are you surprised? I watch MLB Network a lot. Like every fourth Saturday, 9 o'clock on a Saturday or Sunday, your movies is still on. You still get residuals from that?
Yeah, they get smaller and smaller, but yeah, they come in. The MLB version is PG rated, though. They have to, because that's the general audience.
Listen, I'm a romantic. Like back the movie, Nuke makes it to the majors, Crash comes back, becomes a manager, sets the record for home runs, comes back, and Annie have a dance at the end. And it's got a happy ending after all the the stuff.
It has a happy ending because the man and the woman find each other, but he's had to give up baseball, his dream. So he had to make a big choice in his life, and that was very apparent to me in the minor leagues. So you get to that point where you have to choose: do I keep going, for a cup of coffee? Will I make a breakthrough at the age of 28 or 27? Or is this it? And do I want to become Crash Davis 10 years later? And I see that, and it's heartbreaking for a lot of guys. And but it's that's what baseball is. It's not what you see in the MLB. That's the guys that make it.
You know what I love? I did travel for 38 years, and I lived named Annie. We used to, by the buses, there were Annies all over the place.
Yeah.
That's the perfect name for, what kind of any new projects on the horizon for you? Or
Well, I have a Western that we Hope goes, a series next spring on AMC. I've wanted to do a Western for a long time. I have a couple of baseball projects. One is about a pitcher for the Yankees who ends up in the Latin American leagues, trying to get his career back and his arm and just, get rock and roll out of his system, called Our Lady of the Ballpark. And then I have another one that's a newest script that's based on a great, great book by Richard Ben Kramer. And it's about Ted Williams in his 60s when he's a fisherman down in Key West, in the Keys. So I'm still got baseball on my mind, Jay.
Are you an Oriole fan? Any favorite team?
I stopped being an Oriole fan when Peter Angelos bought him because I loved playing for that organization. That was in the glory years, as you recall. I mean, we not only, I'd have spring training with him and everything, but, it was Brooks Robinson, Frank Robinson, 4 20-game winners in '69, on and on. Davey Johnson, they traded for Bobby Grich.
You get to know Davey at all? Great guy.
But I played with Bobby Grich, who they traded Johnson to make way for, and Don Baylor, and and they had Belanger, they were Boog Powell. It was just, and Earl Weaver was great, and the organization, Jay, Harry Dalton was the GM, and Frank Lannon.
This is where Frank Casher came from, my former guy who hired me. Yeah. I got your perfect next movie. Find out what Jim Palmer's secret is for having black hair and however old he is. It's incredible. He looks like he's 24 years old.
Yeah, I want whatever that bottle is. I want some of it.
Yeah,
I don't have enough. I don't have enough hair to put it on.
Me either, right? Hey, listen, I'm a big fan. The book, it's a great book. Come and read it. I must have seen the movie at least 100 times. And again, I watch it from a former PR guy's point of view, and it took me a while to get the message. And I've been doing that for years with my players here. We have press seminars every spring, the do's and don'ts. Be friendly. Who was a friend of mine and who Eddie Murray I used to help me with. Eddie's philosophy was they're not your friends, but be friendly. And he was a sage too. So I was supposed to have a lot of guys around me who did what Chris Davis did, but not to that extreme.
Well, Eddie's a LA guy, so I'm a huge Eddie Murray fan.
Listen, I know you're a busy man. I appreciate your time. I'll probably look for the movie the next week or so. I'll watch Bull Durham again.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you for your time, Ron. I pray good luck with your new ventures.
My pleasure. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye.